Talk Show.
Yeah, thank you for taking time.
We were saying during
schedule.
the break that we believe Dr. Haas, Doctor, right? I'm sorry.
Matthew.
Okay. Was one of our first guests. Well, when the
early
started,
on, I don't know if it was first, but it was early. Yeah, it was a long time ago.
Yes.
Yeah.
So welcome back.
Thank you.
Yes, indeed. Let's make sure we got all our bearings together here, Max. So we got everything running so that people can hear us online and on air. So tell a friend. So Dr. Haas, like I think, Matthew, I think where we there's so many different angles that we can start, but Max, I want to make sure that we remind folks to get out and vote. Right. This you can never overlook any election. They all make a difference in some way, shape, or form. And one of the things on the ballot for people under our listening area right about now is the Albemarle County Public School Board. And so that is of the uttermost importance. So Matt, let's actually start right there. When it comes to whenever you look at school board candidates in an election coming up, like how do you approach that? And when it comes to maybe communicating with your staff and communicating with the community on how important a school board election is to you, to the state of the public schools.
Absolutely. I appreciate you asking that. There is a delineation between the board and the superintendent where much of what goes on in terms of communications around candidates for the board comes through the school board and the school board office. However, as you can imagine, I do play a role, and part of what I do is try to be as open, transparent, and informative with the candidates as they seek the office. I really respect anyone in our community that will really put themselves on the line for what they believe in. It takes a lot of courage to do that, especially when it comes to facing a public ballot. And so one of the things that I do, for example, is when a candidate is known to me, I do reach out to them. I offer to meet with the candidate, and we go through our operating budget for the current year, the strategic plan, as well as our capital plan, which is our long-range advisory committee plan. And I feel like spending an hour with the candidate, building a relationship and giving them essential information and then where to go find it and opening up the door to communication is really an important thing to do so that they are as prepared as they can be to participate in public discourse and really have the facts about the school system rather than what they might just hear on the news or see on social media. So that's one of the things that I do.
And so like any good job interview, I realize that meeting with the candidates isn't a job interview. I'm sure there's a conversation of what does this school system need? What does this school board need? Tell us what, in your opinion, your school system needs.
Well, what Albemarle County Public Schools needs is, I would say, not unique in some respects, and then particularly unique in others. I would say we're not unique in the respect that our school system needs board members who are 100% devoted to public education, and that they are supportive of our families, our employees, particularly our teachers, who are the key to educating our students. So I feel that that's the first qualification for a school board member. And opinions about how to go about supporting public education are going to differ. But if we always start with that as a big overlapping principle, then how we get there becomes debatable. And often that debate, I think, is one of the most healthy parts of a public board. Albemarle County is unique in the respect that we have long time intransigent achievement gaps between our students of color and our white students, and then also between our students with disabilities and all students, and students who are economically disadvantaged and all students. Really, across any of the individual demographic groups, we have achievement gaps, and we also perform below the state average when it comes to the one high stakes test, which is the standards of learning test. So a board member coming into that environment, I feel, has to have a laser focus on the achievement gap, providing resources and accountability, and also transparency, so that the public knows, particularly our families and our and the local taxpayers, as to how we're doing and what we're doing to try to improve the things we can improve within the school system to make those things better. So the other thing I would say where it's not unique is that a candidate coming onto the school board, they are an elected official, however, they are part of a board.
Right.
And so it is critical that someone joining the school board understand that while they are an individual leader and they represent a magisterial district, they cannot accomplish anything on the board unless they are part of the overall team of the board.
And how many board members?
There are 7.
And all 7 members are at-large members?
No, there are 6 magisterial members,
Sorry.
and then there's an at-large member.
Okay.
So with the Board of Supervisors, there are 6 magisterial members, and it's sometime in relatively recent history, the Albemarle County Schools took on an at-large member, which I think was a good idea, because then you don't have a split vote, right? So it's either going to go 4-3. It's going to go 4-3 if there's a split. But having said that, it's really important for all the board members to understand that whatever they accomplish in terms of policy and direction for the school system, they accomplish as one board. That doesn't mean that they just all agree with each other all the time. And as I said earlier, by having differences of opinion, you can reach a better decision oftentimes, but they still have to do it as a board together. So a person joining the board needs to understand that it's a collaborative board. And I think our school board is a collaborative board. I am really very happy to work for the Albemarle County School Board. Those qualifications that I talked about earlier, I feel they meet all of them. And they are, I know whatever candidates succeed in joining the board this fall, and then in January, they'll be embraced as part of a board.
Okay.
So
just real quick. And how many vacancies does the board have? Upcoming vacancies?
So you have the at-large, which is currently occupied by Jono Alcaro. He's been on the board for quite some time. And so he essentially vacated his seat. So he's not running. Then you have the Whitehall district, which is Rebecca Berlin. And she was appointed by the board when Dave Oberg retired from the board. So she's running now as a candidate for that. And then you also have the Ravenna, which is our school board chair, Judy Lee. And so she's running. And also Scottsville district, which is Ellen Osborne. She's running. Those 2 board members are not opposed by another candidate, but I think one has someone out there who's said they're going to be a write-in candidate.
Okay.
And then recently, Katrina Carlson left the board, so the board's in the process right now. They did interviews a couple weeks ago, and so they're in the process now of trying to figure out how to appoint someone to the board, and then actually this time next year they can do a special election to elect a person to the board to fill her term.
Okay. It's a lot of vacancies.
So there's a lot right now.
A lot going on.
Yeah.
And that's why we have you here, ladies and gentlemen. Dr. Matt Haas of Albemarle County Public Schools. He is the superintendent. Let me ask this question. Something that really confuses me, y'all, is like why certain officials align with political parties. And so I'm asking you that question, Matthew, in regards to education, to public schools, because to me, my hope would be, or it should be, like, for instance, I'll contrast it with like police, for instance. Like, I don't know why when somebody runs for sheriff or whatnot, they align with the political party. I'm like, it's supposed to be law enforcement, protecting and serving everybody, right? So I want to ask you, Dr. Haas, on maybe why you think, or or what role, or does it really, or is it just for the funding part of why a candidate would need to align with the political party when it comes to doing what's best for public education?
So just remembering that the title of this show is in my humble
yeah,
opinion.
absolutely.
Because and also I will you may not be satisfied with my answers because I have a fine line to walk. And also I am not a partisan person. When I am a moderate, I try to find as far as my public life, it's very important to me to be sure that all people can see in me some representation. So I'll say that as a disclaimer. My feeling is that, and it is a fact that school boards in Virginia are nonpartisan. They are not
by definition.
By definition, they are not to designate. Even the state school board, the Virginia Department of Education school board, is supposed to be a nonpartisan school board. However, at the state level, the governor appoints members of that board, so that can shake out for partisanship. My opinion is that until recently, we have not had candidates identifying themselves, or perhaps community members identifying candidates as members of a particular political party. And I think there's a couple things that impact that. One is, yes, I agree with you, Charles, that there's infrastructure. When you have infrastructure behind you as a candidate and support, and then I think you have a better chance of doing fundraising, things like that, because it's not a free business. People need funding, unfortunately, to run for these seats. The other thing I think is a relatively new phenomenon that's developed through state government, the federal government. There's increased polarization around public positions, so elected public positions. And so I think there is some I would almost refer to it as like safety in numbers, or safety in a coalition. If you can be part of a group, or part of or affiliated with a particular political organization, then you're gonna have some cover, and you're also gonna have a lot of support. And it makes it so that there's a ready constituency that once they are signaled that you're part of their their constituency, that they're going to identify with you, and you could often just almost automatically have their votes
sense.
because of the polarization.
Right. Makes sense. Of course, ideologically I disagree, but it makes sense. I get it. But hey, but the questions are already rolling in for you, by the way.
Great.
Like so you're a popular guest. Just want you to know.
I'm not surprised. You probably have a big listening audience.
Well, thank you. So yeah, so as far as the direction we can take, let's go ahead and get to some of the questions. Well, actually, no, Max. I think we still got to set up some more of the framework for the conversation. I think we would be remiss if we don't first approach. I kind of go back, because anybody that watches the local news knows that Albemarle County Public Schools have come under fire. Your job has come under fire publicly. Things like that.
So now you have a microphone.
Now you
Tell
have a microphone.
everybody how you really feel.
Right.
I'm just playing. Go ahead, Charles. Sorry.
No, you're good. But in all fairness, and to even give benefit of the doubt, like knowing that none of us are perfect, fact is, and correct me if I'm wrong, but majority, I can't even say majority, but I would say a lot of, if not most of, public school systems have been hit hard and have seen like unfathomable changes and unexpected changes post-COVID. And so I would say personally, some of the heat that a lot of our teachers have taken, a lot of principals have taken, a lot of, like school administrators have taken, has been unwarranted to a certain extent, because it's something that we're seeing nationwide, like when it comes to fall offs in attendance, performance, things like that. Now, that's not an excuse that we don't have a job to do, right? But I think that needs to be kept in perspective. So like Max said, actually, want to give you an opportunity out of things that have been made public as far as the criticism of recent performance of Albemarle County schools. what the state of that is from your perspective and some of your goals as far as fixing these things.
Sure. So I'd say the biggest, the most important group that are impacted by all the things you talked about are our students. As an employee, and and as a workforce and as a community, we're all adults, and we have had our school years, and I worry mostly about children and their sense of belonging to a school system that is stable.
Mhm.
And when they go to school, they feel like it's a stable place, and they feel like they want to go there, and their needs are going to be met, their academic,
Mhm.
their physical, and their social emotional needs. So
Mhm.
the thing I would say, and my top priority always is that understanding that at the community level, there will always be some sense of a commotion, or there will
Mhm.
be some different kinds of controversies that come about. The priority is to keep the students at the school level feeling like this is settled for me every day at school. And when I
Mhm.
get to school, I've got a teacher that is meeting my needs, and I get to be part of something good. So that's really what I try to focus on. For me personally, in this job, I expect to be criticized all the time. And that's because it's part of my job to receive feedback and listen to feedback from all of our stakeholders,
Mhm.
our students, our parents, our families, our employees, taxpayers. Uh, I expect to be criticized, and um, I have not had a day where I'm not criticized in some way, either on a one-to-one level or in a community level. And when I meet with people, it is my habit to ask the person, depending on whether it's appropriate, to please give me feedback on my job performance.
Mhm.
How am I doing right now? Particularly with the people that report directly to me, because we have to set an environment where feedback is expected and it's a gift. And
Mhm.
so even if feedback feels embarrassing, or it feels like a criticism, or it's public, I still see it as something that I need to reflect on and find something in it that I can keep being better at my job. Because, how well I do my job does influence and does impact how things happen in the school system. So
Mhm. Mhm.
I accept the fact that that's what takes place. Now, our school system, as you know, uh, for pretty much any recorded time,
Mhm.
has had uh, achievement gaps with our students. And what I wanted to do when I became superintendent is to shine a light on those achievement gaps.
And I'm sorry, when did you become superintendent?
In 2018,
Okay.
was to shine a light on those gaps and expose and make sure that we bring the good, the bad, and the ugly data straight to the school board
Mhm.
in public venues and in reports, so that the board would see the actual real facts about the school system. The fact is, we are a successful school system. Overall, we perform very well. I would say that families are happy with our schools, and they're happy with the support they receive. However, we have these intransigent achievement gaps, and particularly in reading and in math, and also opportunity gaps. And so you can't address something unless you shine a light on it and give the facts about it.
Mhm.
And then when you do that, you do run the risk of being mostly associated with it. But
Mhm.
that if you're afraid of taking that risk, then the problem's never going to get solved.
Mhm.
So from my perspective, I'm not trying to go on someplace else. I'm not interested in padding my resume or
Mhm.
having everything sound like it's great all the time here. I'm committed to doing the work here. And so I'm fine with if someone wants to blame me or blame the decisions I've made for how things are. However, the decisions we've been making are the right decisions
Mhm.
to move forward and change things. Having an outside consultant come in to review all of our data, again, the good, the bad, and the ugly, to to create a report that gives us the root causes, which aren't pretty, and also the recommendations for how we should deal with them, and making it public, which is rare for school systems to make such a report public. Those are risky propositions for a person in my position, because again, the expression of shooting the messenger came from somewhere.
Yeah.
And so fortunately for all of us, our board had a desire to do this work, and they understand that just because we are looking at data where we've not been successful, it's not about blaming, it's about trying to figure out how to get better. And so the steps we're taking, working on our curriculum, the steps we're taking on accountability for schools, and all the work that's going on right now is going to set us up for success and set these students up for greater success with those outcomes.
That sounds good. It sounds good, but it's a lot of work.
Yes. Yes.
So yeah,
there's something. This is not anything you have to respond to, but in listening to your what you just said, there's something to be said if all of the backlash that you and or the board or whomever else is receiving within your school system is stemmed from an attempt to make sure that all students within your school system have an equitable chance of success. It's bad. That's pretty bad. I mean, I realize, I don't want you to say anything that.
I think that it's always hard to try to attribute a particular cause to something that happens. And however, I think one of the things that I would say in response to that is what we should all understand is that when we work with children that need extra time and support, and we figure out how to work with them and provide what they and their family needs for them to be successful academically, it doesn't take anything away from anyone else. In fact, the research shows that school systems that focus on equity and focus on providing students what they need to be successful are more successful with all students. And the notion of the rising tide lifts all the boats is what we're talking about here. And having said that, there is a narrative that, and I've even heard it said, from top political leaders in Virginia, that equity is a confusing word. It causes anger. It causes whatever. It's a simple word. The word equity means that we have high standards for all of our children. We expect all of them to do well, and we are willing, as Charles said, to do the work to provide each child what they need to be successful. And so it's not confusing. It's only controversial if you're worried that it's a takeaway. And equity is not a takeaway.
I mean, I'll say it for you. It's a political talking point, because I know you want to stay nonpartisan, but people are using that as a political tool right now. But I'm curious, because in your values, it actually says equity. Has there been pressure from the state to remove that from your values?
Well, let me put it this way. In the prior administration, there was an Office of Equity that had really just kind of kicked off maybe 2018-ish. And in fact, you remember Dr. Hairston, his department at that time, when the State Department kicked that off, our school system won the first award for equity in school systems in Virginia in terms of the program that we were doing around culturally responsive teaching. And some of the other, the anti-racism policy that we adopted. And when the new governor came in, and we're on our second state superintendent since the governor came in. The first state superintendent deleted all of that from the state webpage. Anything referencing equity was completely removed from it. So I can't think that that's a coincidence.
Right. So Max, I think we got to jump into these questions. The audience been chiming in. So we have what look like we have about 3 of them so far, Matt. So we try to get through these. So first one that came in is, what if any support system has been put in place specifically for Black students and African American students to address the achievement gap?
Mm-hmm. So the support systems, as we talked about earlier, around providing students what they need to be successful. Some of it is around accountability, and so when we work with our schools and work with our school principals, we do not look at overall results for students. We work with them around specific enrollment groups, including Black students, and we set targets. We set goals for improving their results in terms of reading and math. So that support without accountability is, it's basically just providing things without a measure at the end to see if they're working. The support networks, I would say, at the school level are, for example, this year going into the budget, we introduced a reading specialist at every school above and beyond the new Virginia standards for reading specialists. So when a child comes in and if they're not meeting their benchmarks in terms of phonemic awareness, even at kindergarten or first grade, then they have access to a reading specialist. At the high school level, a lot of it is built around opportunities. And so what we do now, in accord with our anti-racism policy, just to kind of give you the other end of the spectrum from elementary school to high school, is every year for 10th graders, we offer the PSAT, which is the precursor to the Scholastic Aptitude Test. And what we now have as a standard operating procedure is that counselors review PSAT results looking for students who are not typically represented in our advanced academic classes at the high school level. And there's actually a range of scores where it's telling you that the child, the young adult could be successful in an AP class or another type of college class. And we have a standard operating procedure for our counselors that demands that they reach out to that child and the family, counsel them on joining that class so that they can have a more rigorous experience. So those are just a couple of the things that we do to try not just to provide the support, but also have accountability and higher expectations for our students of color.
Yeah. So let me, but I have to ask: are there more instances that are more specific to the Black and African American student population? Because what I heard you say was great, but at the same time, I feel like that could, like, those approaches are more umbrella, like that would serve everybody. But specifically when you look at like the DEI work that's happening, like the good folks like Dr. and Ayan and folks like that are doing, when they come to you with very specific Black and African American issues of that student population, are there specifics that kind of separate those where we say, well, wow, we need to deal with this issue because it is impartially affecting this student population?
And I think the example that you gave around culturally responsive teaching is probably the most important thing that we're doing and that can be done with our educators to increase their cultural awareness. And the reason I say that is because it's about each teacher understanding their biases, understanding what their blind spots are, and being able to close the opportunity gap, the opportunity for a relationship between the teacher and the child. That gap, whether the extent to which that gap closes or grows, particularly for a child in kindergarten or first grade, will set the tone and set the stage for that child's trajectory moving forward. Our board, as part of our anti-racism policy, has said that by the year 2026, all Albemarle County schools teachers will be credentialed in culturally responsive teaching. And we have maintained our culturally responsive teaching professional learning program in spite of the fact that, as we mentioned earlier, there's been a kind of change of climate in Virginia around that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think within the Office of Community Engagement, we have several directors. We have a director of equity. We have a director of community engagement, and the support that they provide is of particular importance because it's support around closing the gap between families and the school.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the keys to a child being successful at school is whether their parents feel like they can advocate, that they know what's going on, that they know how well their child's doing.
Yeah.
That's the truth.
And we, going into this school year, Dr. Kaiser and her department established a requirement, and of course I supported it, that every school host 4 academic family nights this school year.
Mm-hmm.
And so what that means is bringing families in, helping them learn about the science behind reading instruction, math instruction, and helping them be part of their child's education in the school. But it doesn't go far enough just to open the door and say, come in if you want. They target families that they haven't seen, or that they're worried that their families are marginalized in some way. They're reaching out directly to them and having them come in for those nights. And in talking with Dr. Kaiser about it, she feels like they have been very successful so far this year.
Gotcha. And those things feed into 2 questions that we have. So appreciate you already alluding to those. I think the first one we can go to is this question and comment that says, nationally and locally, there have been in-depth conversations and concerns about the lack of Black and brown teachers of color. As the demographics of our area shifts, and which some we didn't even touch on, but we've touched on in other shows about how you do have a higher immigrant and Black and brown population in general that's coming to the county, and some are coming from the city into the county. So I'm sure that's something you're facing. So this question is, as the demographics of our area shifts to include more people of color, can you talk to us how you are leading the charge for recruitment and retention of teachers of color, as it pertains to your mission of equity, in terms of retention? And I can revisit this if you forget a part of the question, but to address the recruitment and retention, but also in terms of retention, has any focus been placed on supporting the teachers of color who are maybe the only ones in their building? Also, in the school where the teaching staff has no teachers of color, which strides are being made to help students see the value in diversity?
Yes.
So that was kind of loaded.
No, that's great. And I think that all aligns with the work we're doing in our human resources department and our strategic planning. So I know I give these like $5 answers. So if I'm going on too long, you can cut me off.
Okay.
But it is true that Albemarle County has a shifting demographic, particularly in the urban ring and the southern and northern parts of the urban ring. Over time, when you look at our data, we have gone from when I first joined the school system 20 years ago, about 70% of our students were white students. And now it is 57%.
Wow.
So there's been a big shift. And that is one of the reasons why I think we have not been particularly successful around closing achievement gaps, is because as our student population has changed, the old methods, or the methods that kind of worked with students that came with a lot of the same background as the teacher, are not as effective. And so our teachers need to constantly strive to become culturally relevant and culturally responsive in the work that they're doing. And I feel like they are. I feel like there's a lot less pushing going on, and a lot more teachers raising their hands and saying, I want to do that work. And what can you give me what I need so I can do it? Now, we recently have had a minor, but in some ways significant bump in the percentage of our teachers of color in Albemarle County schools. When I started in the county, there were 10% of the teacher workforce in Albemarle County schools when I was principal at Albemarle was teachers of color. that moved to 11%, and then it just kind of sat there, and it's just sat there forever. 3 years ago, or well, it'll be going into the third year, we started our own human resources department for our Albemarle County schools. And what that allowed us to do was begin to focus on these areas of concern, and do it, really prioritize diversifying our teacher workforce. So recently, as a part of some of the changes that we've been making, we went from 11% teachers of color to 13% teachers of color. Now, it doesn't sound like a lot, and it's not a lot, but it is a move in the positive direction. And if we had started making these moves 10 years ago, 20 years ago, we'd be sitting on, a much better situation right now. A couple things I think have impacted that. One is people really beginning to understand the power and the excellence of teachers of color. That when you have a teacher of color in the classroom, the research shows that not only do the students of color prefer that teacher and have that teacher as someone they really prefer to work with and feel engaged with, but all students feel that way, regardless of their demographic background. The other piece is that with the national and state and local teacher shortage, there are now differentiated pathways for people who have started their career in education but weren't necessarily credentialed the same way as a teacher normally would go into it. So there's multiple pathways now for certification, and what that's done is allowed us as a school system to identify strong teaching assistants, other paraprofessionals who have some education background, or maybe they have a 4-year degree in a different field, but they want to be a teacher and they're passionate about it. So we've been able to recruit them and provide them opportunities to get credentialed, the support they need financially. And so we have a large percentage of our teachers this fall that are provisionally licensed, and they're teachers of color. Now, the other piece is about retention, and that's a whole nother difficult task, because when you have a large majority of your teaching force, particularly in a school that is white teachers or not diverse, it can be difficult to retain teachers of color. So what our Office of Community Engagement has been doing is working with the whole group of teachers of color and having gatherings with that community, so that even if I'm working in a school and I do not see another teacher that looks like me, I know that on a relatively frequent basis, I'm going to be able to get together with other teachers that can identify with the issues I'm facing. We can problem solve, and we can just understand just how important I am, as a teacher of color, to the school and to the school system.
Absolutely.
And if there are Albemarle County Schools teachers of color listening today, I just want to express my appreciation. You make a positive difference along with your colleagues in the schools. And that's the thing we've got to work on, Charles, because no matter how much we hire, if people are going out of the bottom of the bucket, it's not going to change anything.
Key point. Thank you for that. Thank you for that.
Yes.
And I think that that also feeds into something that I think encapsulates sort of the overall conversation, because a lot of times, just like with any entity of an ecosystem, I would say, right? A lot of times we look at the schools, or we look at the teachers or the principal or the superintendent to do things that really requires a handshake between the schools and the community or the family, and so like we all play a part in the student's success, like how well prepared the student is and how well taken care of they are before they enter the school building plays a role in how they perform at school, So I think that feeds into this, to the last question that we were sent so far, which is, ACPS's mission statement includes the statement, "We seek to build relationships with families and communities to ensure that every student succeeds." Can you talk about the strategic steps that are being taken to rebuild relationships and establish sustainable partnerships with families and communities whose children have historically and continue feel disconnected or unwelcome at their local school? Can you talk to us about any community or family networking partnerships being created or currently in place? Where can families go to find out information about where they can access these relationships to build resources?
Yeah, that's great. I love that question, because really, for a lot of reasons, we cannot be successful with students without partnerships in the community. And I do think one of the positive side effects, I guess that you might call it, or collateral, but really it's one of the main things to the criticism of public schools, is that a lot of everyday people are coming out and saying, wait a minute, we may be hearing this at the national level, or we may be hearing a lot of rhetoric, but we love our schools and we want to be part of the solution. So our job is not to isolate ourselves and say that we have all the answers to solving problems. Rather, our job is to reach out to partners, and our number one partner is the family. We need to partner up with families. Families need to feel that they are welcome and that they are an appreciated and valued part of their child's education process. Mm-hmm. And so the first thing I would say is, if you want to reach out and find out more about how you can connect with the schools and be part of that, I suggest reaching out to Eric Irizarry. Mm-hmm. He is our director of community engagement. Also, Dr. Jesse Turner. I think I said Dr. Eric Irizarry, but I'll say Dr. Jesse Turner. Mm-hmm. He is a director for family engagement. Okay. And so these staff members can be a first point of contact. Eric has been doing wonderful work in engaging, particularly our Latino community. There was recently a Latinx health fair at Albemarle High School that drew in hundreds of participants from around that community. And he did that in cooperation with Dr. Luna. And we have the other push that we've worked on is the academic family nights that are going on at the schools. Those are coordinated through the central office, and we provide support for that. So those are an intentional effort to create an environment that's parent friendly, where we don't all have all the answers, and that parents walk out with resources that are going to help them work with their children to be stronger readers. At the next level, we have partnerships with community organizations like the Chamber of Commerce. I know when we were struggling, and we continue to struggle to recruit and hire and retain bus drivers, we had outreach from the Chamber of Commerce on helping us to advertise bus driver positions in the school system. And so at that level, we also need partnerships with larger community organizations.
Gotcha. Thank you for that. And so when it comes to these strategic relationships and partnerships, the family and community, are they do you feel that the value is felt there, like from the families? Now, I guess that's the last part of that question actually, is how do people get this info? Mm-hmm. If whether it's a teacher that may be the only person of color in their school, or whether the students are feeling like that they don't see other people of color, or they may be from a religion or a culture that's not that's not known, that's not widely known, or and they may not feel accepted. So so when it comes to these resources, how do they? Because you mentioned a lot of heavy hitters that you have on staff, but how readily accessible and available are these resources?
I think that's that's one of the areas. I was out at a listening tour event last Wednesday night out at Woodbrook, and that's really one of the areas I think is a weak spot for us, is our web page in terms of easy access for families to information to information they need to engage with the school system and sometimes their school, but also understandable information about their child's progress. So we've been getting a lot of feedback around that, and we have some work to do with our webpage, with information that we provide on it. So I think that question just echoes some of the criticism that we've had recently around accessibility to information that people can use. Mm-hmm. Now, I would say at the school level, because of the work that we do with principals and because of their unique ideas around embracing their school community, I think there's a lot more going on that we don't hear about at the division level. Mm-hmm. It doesn't perk up as a whole big community thing, but I'm never it never ceases to amaze me the efforts that the principals are going through to ensure that that they have all different demographic groups represented, and the families that are often marginalized are the first families they go to when they're seeking to build relationships in their schools. So I feel that, that's one of those things where you work, some people say, well, prioritize strategy. And when you change strategies, inevitably that will get to the culture. And then other people say, well, if you don't fix the culture, it will eat strategy for lunch every day. I think you have to work on both things. That you have to.
It's the human element.
Right. Yeah. You got to work on the strategies, but I feel like we can have strategy all day long, but if a family comes to the school and walks away feeling that they were ignored or their needs weren't met, some of that can be the family, but the fact is that it's our job to be supportive of our students and families. So we got to get to yes with families much more often than maybe we do right now.
Yeah. So
I missed a lot of the conversation. Sorry, but I just despite all the hard work that you and decisions that you and your school board make, a lot of this comes down to the boots on the ground and whether or not they buy into what you all are trying to implement here and have the best interests of the students at heart. And what's that like? Like, do you have the support that you need to accomplish the goals that you have within your school system, or that the board has for the school system?
That's a great point, because just me sitting here right now, when we've got more than 1,400 teachers and about the same number of classified staff, so about 2,700 employees, ranging from the bus driver that's the first person to see the child when they get on the bus in the morning, to the classroom teacher. And so if the work that we're doing doesn't find its way to the classroom experience and is not embraced by at the classroom level, then it will fail. And if when the classroom door closes, it doesn't translate, then it will fail. And I used to get discouraged, I would say, maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago, because I just didn't know, like, how do you do that, right? And how does it work? But what I realized over time is that particularly now, I'm very proud of our school system, and I'm always going to hold it up as, when I talk about our Albemarle County Public Schools employees, our teachers, our principals, our custodians, our everyone. Right. I really feel that they join our system understanding that we have a mission. We put that mission in front of them. It's at the bottom of everybody's email. It is probably the first time in my career where people openly talk about closing the achievement gap as our mission. Why are we here? We're here to close achievement gaps. We're here to help every child be successful. It's not pushing a wet noodle anymore to get people to see that as important. And I think it's because of what they come with when they know that they're joining a school system, that's our work. And if they didn't want to be part of that, then they wouldn't be on board. So if you're trying to get something to stick and the other side that is sticky, then I think I'm optimistic that what we are working and striving to change, if we listen to our employees and acknowledge the challenges that they have and listen to what they say they need and provide it to the best we can, then they're already sticky and hungry to make changes for kids. And it's just a matter of getting things in alignment and getting it to them so they can do the work. So, I mean, I am optimistic that over the next several years that we have laid bare all the issues.
Yeah.
We have had an analysis of what the causes are and what we can do about it. We are taking steps to make a difference. These are all things that are very specific that during the time that I've worked here for 20 years, that we have not had this kind of laser focus on these issues. Things will change. Things are going to change.
Yeah.
Well,
One
you
of
know,
the things-
if there's any consolation, we actually have someone who just wanted to say good afternoon, Dr. Hall. So there you go. You know, you got a friend. They're just saying, hey, we're here.
Well, good afternoon.
We're here. We're listening.
Thank you.
I was going to say one of the things that I can appreciate in what you just said was that you acknowledged the custodian and the bus driver. And
important.
oftentimes those individuals don't get mentioned at all, get mentioned last, and you especially don't hear them in the conversation of
achievement gap.
Right, the achievement gap. And so I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And I heard you guys have given them some raises, and that's great. Take good care of them. But no, I appreciate that you have the insight to be able to look at this holistically and all individuals involved versus just the one standing in front of the classroom. So.
Yeah, it takes everyone. And I'm going to say this just because, but one of the things as having been around for a while, I've had a lot of these roles. And in fact, for the whole first 2.5 months of the school year this year, I did drive a morning bus route for students who attended Burley. And, you know, the thing is, it just drove home for me how important that first person is. And, you know, when students are getting on the bus, there's an urgency. I felt an urgency to learn their names because when you greet a child by their name, when they first come on the bus every day, you see a difference in their face when they come by you, doing things like acknowledging, you know, they might, there was a student that had a t-shirt on for Virginia Commonwealth University. And I said, hey, that's a great school, you know, and my daughter goes there, and you make that connection. And everybody can do it. And I've seen custodians that will take time to do reading tutoring with students, establish relationships with them. And our principals, I'll tell you what, they've got a heck of a job, but and the passion they bring to it and the personalization they make for our kids is just amazing. And yes, having said all that, our classroom teacher, our teaching assistant, our EDEP staff, they're the educators that are going to, I think, push the needle for each kid and help them be successful.
Thank you. So after all that said and done, so folks haven't beat you up too hard. You still here for the long haul. You still gonna get this work done?
Still in the fight.
We're going to get it done.
Okay.
Yes, Charles,
All right.
we will get it done and keep the criticism coming. It is oxygen, and we won't get better, and I won't get better if I don't get feedback. So I appreciate it.
Healthy criticism. And just lastly, I mean, I'll kick it to Max for final words, take us to break. But you know, after all those resources that you mentioned and the work being done, how do people reach out to express concerns or to get in touch with those resources in the county? Okay,
so to reach out, if you just send me an email, you can email the school board, and my email address is the superintendent's office. If you go to the webpage and you find the superintendent's office, you can just click on an email link right there. And it comes in through our communications office. So it's all hands on deck, and I don't care what the problem is you're having. It may seem like you think it's going to be minor for us, or we're not, you know, maybe it's too small. There's no issue too small or no idea, that's not going to be good enough, or question that's we won't answer to try to keep moving things forward for you.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us today, Dr. Haas.
My pleasure.
Best of luck. Well wishes on, your goals for your school. And as the superintendent of Albemarle County Schools, I want to thank you for seeing all of your students in your job duty. So,
Thank you, Mac. I
Mhm.
appreciate it.
yep.